Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Matt Evelo Outdoors. Before we get into this episode and into the story of probably the biggest buck that I will ever shoot in this state, I want to show you guys the 8-point that I killed at the end of last season. I finally got the shoulder mount back. I told you guys about it in a previous episode, showed you a picture of the deer, but let's take a look at the shoulder mount. So this is the 8-point. They did a great job. I use this taxidermist that's in the Madison area. White Oak Taxidermy. If you are in that area, I highly recommend using them for any taxidermy needs that you have. They're reasonably priced, super sweet couple. When I went and picked this up, I was talking with them for probably over an hour, looking at some of the other mounts that they've done and just talking about hunting. They're just such a great taxidermist. I highly recommend them. So let's get into the story of Captain. So, as you guys know, I wrote a lot of letters this season to get prepared to have multiple hunting properties, and it has already paid off on the opening day of general gun season. So, one of the properties that I have is 20 acres. It is situated between two swamps, and there is a like an old logging road or something that goes through between the swamps into right up to a railroad track that borders up against 200 acres of public land that nobody can hunt. It's like walking trails, stuff like that. So when I found it on the Onyx app, I was like, that just looks good. Like there's got to be big bucks in that area. And I did confirm with a friend who works for the DNR FWC here. He knew of big bucks that have been taken in that area as well. So I immediately wrote a letter to the owner, and thankfully they gave me a call. And I was very blessed with this property. They didn't ask for any money. They didn't want me to pay them anything. All they required was that I got hunter's insurance, which was about $125 for the season, and it has already paid off. So if you guys are trying to figure out how to find hunting property, you're getting sick of public land, and you're trying to find some private land to hunt, guys, I cannot recommend enough. Download the Onyx app, buy the upgraded version so that you can see property lines and tax addresses, and start writing letters to people that you want to hunt their land. Introduce yourself. Be open with them about who you are. You have to build that connection and that relationship with the owners for them to be able to trust you to hunt their property. And that's the best way that I can suggest for you guys to find property to hunt. It was taught to me by my mentor, and I'm passing that to you guys that are struggling to find areas to hunt. But back to Captain. So when I got permission to hunt this property, I immediately put out a feeder, put up a stand at the perfect location, a couple paths interlinked in one little section between the swamps, and put up a camera. Early on, didn't see much. Had some does and some spikes coming in and out, but it was early. It was early archery season, and then come the end of September, I think it was September 28th, 27th, somewhere around there, Captain shows up. And I know for a fact that he's the captain of the woods because every time he came out on camera, the other deer disappeared. They would be right there feeding, and then they would be gone, and in he comes every time. They knew not to mess with Captain. As soon as I saw a picture of this buck, I knew I had to have him. He was my main target for the season and main target of a lifetime, quite frankly, because he is that big of a buck. And I didn't have any opportunities early. I committed to sit as much as possible. Honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, don't do what I did. I had no daylight photos of this deer at all, and yet I was sitting 10 to 12 hours a week, which really could have backfired on me, and it didn't. But it probably should have. But I committed 10 to 12 hours a week. I was sitting nonstop, only nighttime photos. I had one photo of him in shooting light early in the morning, like the first couple minutes of shooting light. It was actually a morning I was going to go hunt, and I decided not to. And of course, he came out in shooting light. You know, it's still dark. It would have been a hard shot, but he did show up. And after that, he went completely nocturnal again. He would disappear for a couple days at a time, and I would be worrying the whole time. Did somebody kill him? Did somebody else get the opportunity to harvest this buck? And then he would show back up. My fears would be eased. And then my mind would immediately be like, I have got to get this buck. So this past week, he showed up in daylight, full daylight. 12 p.m. in the middle of the day. I'm sitting at my desk at work, and I get a ding on my phone, and I pull up my camera app, and there he is, standing right there at the feeder. He didn't even really eat. He just kind of walked through for a couple pictures, and then he walked back through for a couple more pictures. He was in there for a total of about an hour, and I immediately was like, I have to go hunt after work. I was not going to hunt that day, but as soon as I got off, I grabbed my gear. I headed to the stand because I was like, if he's out at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day, there's a good opportunity that he's going to be coming back through before shooting light ends. And I messed up. As I walked into the property, he was bedded down between me and my stand. He was about 60 to 70 yards off the road. I didn't see him. I was being as quiet as possible. And then I see this deer get up and sprint off. Very big deer. At first I was thinking maybe it was some does, but the more I looked back at it, it was Captain. And I was kicking myself. I was like, what could I have done differently not to have, number one, scared him from his bed. Maybe I shouldn't have hunted that day. I don't know. I probably couldn't have done anything differently. When hunting, you can't help it when things like that happen. I had to go to the stand with daylight photos like that, and it just so happened that he bedded down in an area he's never bedded down before. But in the end, it still paid off. So that was one day, 12 o'clock p.m. photos. The very next day, Saturday, that was Saturday, November 4th, general gun season opens. And I had a long day. I almost didn't go sit. I had to work that morning, got off work. One of my other properties, I have a bunch of wild hog issues going on. I'm trying to trap them all because they've scared off the deer. And I have another target buck at that property that I haven't seen in a couple weeks because I have hogs coming out every night. And so we set up a trap there, and overnight into Saturday, I caught 4 pigs. So I got off work, had to go deal with 4 hogs, dispatching them, cleaning them. I really try to put anything that I kill to use, even if they are an invasive species like a hog. So we headed out to the property to kill the 4 hogs. So as you can see, those hogs were pretty pissed off. It was a lot of hard work. 4 wild hogs, all of them were over 100 pounds. To take them out, drag them out of the cage, drag them to the truck, clean each one of them. It wasn't that cool of an afternoon, honestly. It was probably low 80s. It was exhausting. And on top of that, I was coming down with a bug, which you can see that I still have. And so after we got done, it was about 3:30 in the afternoon, and me and Dad sat down to watch the Florida State football game. And I was like, at halftime, I'm probably going to go sit in the stand. Halftime came around, and I was this close to not going. I literally told my dad, I don't think I'm going to go. And he said, okay, well, if you don't want to go sit, and we'll just watch the rest of the game here. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to go. I'm just too tired. My throat hurts. I don't feel good. And then something told me, Matt, you have to go sit. It's the opening day of gun season. You can't not sit opening day of gun season. So I got a late start because I decided so last minute to go sit. Shooting light for Saturday, November 4th ended at 7:16 p.m. For those of you that hunt, you want to get in there a couple hours before. I didn't get up into the stand until 5:45 p.m., which is way too late. And that could have backfired on me as well. I'm glad it didn't, but I do have to try to do better at other properties. I'm trying to get up sooner. So I got up at 5:45 p.m. and I'm sitting there. I forgot to wear ear protection when we were taking the hogs out, so my ears were ringing, kind of faded. I couldn't hear much, and so I was like, man, I'm not even gonna be able to hear a deer walk in probably. And I decided to sit it out anyway. And then the afternoon dragged on. I brought my camera because if something came out, I wanted to be able to film it for you guys and get that footage, especially if I, harvested a buck. Unfortunately, I did not get any video footage because I did harvest the buck, but it was 5 minutes before the end of shooting light, and in the middle of the woods, 5 minutes before end of shooting light, it just got too dark for the camera to pick anything up. But I'm sitting there, it's about 7:08, 7:09, and I'm thinking to myself, nothing's coming out. I sat, it was a nice afternoon to sit, nothing's coming out, and that's okay. I had to get to a nephew's birthday party, and so it is what it is. And in 7:10, I noticed a shadow moving across my vision. My stand setup is about 40 yards, 30 to 40 yards from the feeder. And I see the shadow coming in left to right, coming up to the feeder, and I couldn't tell what it was. I mean, this is 5 to 6 minutes before the end of shooting light. To the naked eye, that far, I could tell it was a deer. I could not tell what deer. I figured it was does. Most of the time I have does coming in the last few minutes like that. So I slowly pulled my rifle up, and as soon as I got that scope up, it was him. He was coming in very, very carefully. He didn't just come straight in. All I could see was his head poking out from behind some trees. I saw his rack, and I started thinking, okay, I have 4 minutes, and he's just standing there with only his head showing. Like, what am I going to do? I was thinking, okay, if his neck comes out a little bit, maybe I take a neck shot. I've never shot a deer in the neck. I usually try to go right behind the shoulder. But this was my target buck, and I had to have him. I got lucky. He decided to walk out the rest of the way. As soon as the front half of his body came out, I gave him a little met, and he stopped. He looked up at me. I placed the crosshairs right behind his shoulder, and it was the perfect shot. As soon as I shot, I started listening to see if I could hear how far he ran, if I hear a crash. Within 4 seconds of me shooting, maybe 4 to 5 seconds, I heard a huge crash, and I knew he was down. I couldn't see him, but a crash that loud, that's only one thing. I immediately called my buddy at FWC, who has mentored me, taught me everything I know, and I immediately was on the phone with him. Tony, I shot him. And he said, you shot what? I said, the 10-point. I shot him. He said, no. Yeah, I shot him, Tony. He said, are you sure you got him, though? I said, I heard a big crash. And so Tony tried to calm me down. He could probably hear my voice. It was shaking. He was, oh, Tony. And my whole body shaking. The adrenaline rush, that was the most crazy adrenaline rush I have ever had. Tony told me I needed to wait 20 to 30 minutes just to be sure. You know, if he's dead, great. 20, 30 minutes is not going to hurt anything. And you don't want to jump him if he's not dead, and then he runs off the property. I didn't want to wait that long, honestly, but I didn't really have a choice. I was shaking so bad. I honestly didn't know if I was going to be able to get out of the ladder stand without falling. I mean, a gun, a camera, like climbing down a ladder stand with all of that gear, it's not easy as it is. And then put into how much I'm shaking, I knew I just had to sit. So I texted a couple other friends to let them know that I shot at the 10-point, which actually turns out he's an 11-point. Called my dad, asked him if he could come help me. Again, I had a nephew's birthday party I was supposed to go to. I didn't make it, obviously, and I apologize. Wesley and Quilton, they're twins, and it was their birthday, and I missed it. I am sorry. One day, if you guys ever watch this video, but I think when they grow up and they see the deer that I shot, they'll understand. My dad texted and said he was going to come help me. I called up the processor that we take our deer to, and they were supposed to close at 8 o'clock. And at this point, by the time I get down, it's 7:30, and I started looking for the deer, and I told them, I was like, hey, I know I got this deer. I can be there before 9. Can you guys stay open? Because they'll do everything. They'll cape it out for you. The taxidermist that I use picks up from them, so they'll hold on to the head and the cape, and then the taxidermist gets it. So I look for the buck. I find a couple drops of blood. I call up my buddy that has a dog just in case, and I told him, you know, the situation. I know that I hit him. I heard the crash. He stayed on the phone with me while I tracked this deer, and you know, drop of blood after drop of blood, and then I found no more blood. And I was like, man, there was not a lot of blood at all. And I was like starting to worry a little bit. Did I shoot high? Did I go through the back strap? like what happened that there's not a lot of blood. And so I'm telling him, I was like, I don't know, I might need a dog because I can't find any more blood. Like I'm looking ahead of the trail that it was following and I can't find anything. And then as I'm looking for blood, my headlamp catches a brief glimpse of white in the distance. And I immediately looked and I said, Jason, I found him. He said, did you actually? And I walk up to the buck and I was just like, holy crap. He went maybe 25 to 30 yards. He went through some thick brush, but 25, 30 yards. He didn't go anywhere, but he hardly bled at all. And as soon as I walk up on this buck, I was just astounded. It was such an amazing buck. 11-point buck, mature, 5 or 6 years old, and a massive, massive body. We didn't get an official weight, unfortunately, but I can guarantee you he was over 200 pounds, probably over 220. The weight of dragging him out, trying to get him in the bed of the truck, he was definitely over 200 pounds. He was a very big buck and the captain of the woods. As soon as my dad got there, we were looking for him, and it's easy to get lost in the woods at night. And so we took the wrong path at first, and then I was like, hold on, Dad, stay here. And I backtracked, and then I found the right path. And it was only a matter of like 20 yards between us. I said, all right, Dad. I shined my light. I said, come on. And so he walked over, and I purposely kept my light away from the deer because I didn't want him to see it yet. So he walks up, and I'm just standing there, and he's looking at me. He's like, where's the deer? I'm standing right next to the deer, but it's pitch black. He can't see. And so I was like, turned down, shined the light on the deer. And, my dad's not a hunter. He doesn't necessarily like appreciate deer the same way I do, but he appreciated this one. As soon as I shined that light on him, he was like, oh my gosh, that deer is huge. I was like, I know. This is by far the biggest buck that I might ever kill in this state. Unless I go up north somewhere and, the bucks in Ohio, Wisconsin, stuff like that are crazy. But for Florida, this is a massive buck. It took us a while to get it out of the woods, and then I got to the taxiderm or to the processor, and I got very lucky with the processor. I guess it was a very good day for hunting. There was a lot of trucks in line when I got there. I was like the 16th truck in line. I got there at 8:45. They were supposed to close at 8. And so I'm like the 16th truck in line, and the whole time I'm just in line, inching up, and I realized I haven't gotten a picture of this buck yet. Like with me with the buck. So I actually got out of the truck and I asked the guy behind me, I was like, hey, he rolled down his window. I was like, can you take a picture of me with the buck? He said, yeah, of course. He's like, I was trying to see how big it was. I could see the rack sticking up out of the bed of the truck. I couldn't tell what it was. And so I opened the bed of the truck, and, he was amazed. It was such a big buck. We had other people that were kind of just hanging out at the processor, and they came over to look at it. And then when I finally got up to be first in line, one of the main people that worked there came up, and I'd actually talked with him a couple days before, because on Halloween night I killed a 7-point buck, and I dropped it off, and I was showing him pictures of my target bucks, and I told him how much I want this buck specifically, and he wished me luck and said, I hope you get him. And so I pull up, I get out of my truck, and he's standing there. He has his pad of like, what do you want done with the meat and everything like that. And I said, hey. He's like, hey. He's like, you remember that buck I showed you a picture of? He said, yeah. I was like, I got him. He's like, no, you didn't. I got him. So I opened the bed of the truck, and we pull that guy out, and we're just all looking at it just like, holy crap. And everybody was in agreement. That is a stud of a buck. I mean, just a stud. After that, the night went pretty quick. Told him what I wanted done with the meat. Told him I wanted it caped out, which taxidermist to use, and I was driving home. I didn't sleep much that night. It seemed very surreal, almost like I didn't believe that it happened. A couple of nights before that, I actually dreamed of getting this buck, and I was like, man, what a dream. But it's, I wasn't holding out hopes. A buck like that, it wasn't even rut time yet. I was never going to see him in daylight like this early on, and so I wasn't holding out a lot of hope at getting him. I didn't have any daylight photos except for the day before that I got him, and everything just lined up. Everything did. The memory of this buck, I'll never forget. I wish I could have gotten video footage for you guys. I wish I could have gotten the whole thing on camera. It just so happened to work out that he came out, the last 5 minutes. I really, really appreciate all you guys watching this episode. Season's far from over. Rut has not even happened yet, and that is going to be the prime time for hopefully getting some footage for you guys of some hunts, and hopefully getting on another one of my target bucks for the season. I have one really good property I haven't even had a good buck show up at yet, and I'm still holding out hope. Got a nice view plot put in that you guys have seen in previous episodes, and so I'm thinking during rut something's going to come out there too. So hopefully I'm going to be able to get some footage for you guys with another buck this season. But I do appreciate you guys tuning in, watching this episode, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good night.